Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Layman's Law School, where two Southern gentlemen lawyers sit around and discuss the legal issues of the day, hopefully in layman's terms, so that you can better understand what's going on, what you're seeing on TV. Hello, Shawn.
How are we doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
Just the two of us again today.
That's right.
I don't know what Reed is doing, but he's been absent as of late.
I think he had some electrical issues, so he's somewhere being shocked, like giving himself a few little shots here and there, accidentally for sure.
Well, I hope he's working on it with someone else at least there who knows what they're doing.
Yeah. He isn't here to make sure that we do our proper toast, so I'll go ahead and lead that off. It's Friday.
And Chace was a little bit late today, so I went ahead and got into my drink a little bit earlier. So
as did I.
But there's no Bud Light for you to drink, so I know you're happy.
It is a good day. It is a good day. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do something a little bit different today. We are going to discuss a legal issue of the day, but we're going to try and show you a little bit about kind of what we do. Some of the things that we have to do while we're engaged in the practice of law. And that means taking a position, one side or the other. And oftentimes in law school, we were told we'd argue one position, and then we had to turn right back around and argue the exact other position, citing evidence and stuff like that.
And sometimes they were just made up things that weren't even real issues, that you just had to figure stuff out.
But it's a good exercise for everybody out there. It's a good exercise to be able to actually think. You need to be able to hold two ideas in your mind at the same time and compare them, unbiasedly, in order to actually have a good idea about, what's the right decision to make.
Well, and it's especially true about trial lawyers. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what I tell every one of our prospective clients when they come in, is that, everything that we're doing throughout working the case is trying to objectively look at the case and identify, if this case is a trial, each piece of testimony and evidence that will come in, and whether each piece will be helpful to them, not helpful to their case, not relevant whatsoever. And that's really the only way that we can look at both sides to see what the strength of our case is or the weakness of our case. And, we need to settle this one because we have some major issues. Yeah. So it's very important to at least be able to understand the other side and where they're coming from. Right. And that most of the time they're coming from some type of logical position to get to where they're going.
Yeah. And you have to be able to do that to be able to give your client advice about what to do. If you see a freight train coming based on the evidence the other side's presenting,
time to get off the tracks.
Exactly. You got to be able to tell them. Well, today we're going to be discussing a freight train that hit us January 6th. It's been in the news a lot. The Trump's removal from the Colorado ballot is among others. The Supreme Court just heard it not long ago,
which we've had a previous podcast on that issue.
That's
also
right. We're going to follow it up a little bit, but today we're going to present you some evidence regarding insurrection and what it means to engage in insurrection. And I'm going to present evidence on the side that Donald Trump actually engaged in or gave aid or comfort to insurrectionists.
Sure.
And Shawn's going to present some evidence that he did not engage in insurrection or give aid or comfort to insurrectionists. And so I'm going to present one side and then allow Shawn to present his. And I want you, if you can, to hold two ideas in your mind at the same time unbiasedly, because I know everybody's got an opinion on this. They usually fall down on one side or the other, or you don't care at all. But either way, be able to hold these two ideas and listen and make a decision about sort of whether you believe there was some responsibility or he did engage in or aid or comfort. And it's important to note that we've already agreed on definition of insurrection. Okay?
Sure.
Okay, because there's a lot to fight about there, as we saw in the Supreme Court hearing.
Because it's not defined.
No, it's not. It was written at a time when the Civil War just occurred. And so everybody was clear about what that meant.
Sure.
There was no debating about what that meant at that time. So, but we haven't really clearly defined it outside of that going forward very well. And it's something that was noted about the Supreme Court. But we're going to say that it is a organized effort to use violence to overthrow or interfere with the Constitution.
That definition works for me.
Okay. And engage in, give aid and comfort to. We're going to allow just the regular definition from Webster's Dictionary. Okay?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, perfect. Without further ado, I think I am going to be up first, as I have the burden of proof, being the prosecution. All right. And I do have a slide presentation, but before we get into that, I want to just sort of give a roadmap. What we're going to talk about here, as far as evidence that shows that Donald Trump engaged in and aided and gave comfort to an insurrection. And the roadmap basically is that in the prelude to the insurrection, he perpetrated what turned out to be a falsehood about the election being stolen from him. And what that did for his followers, he famously noted he could go to Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody dead in broad daylight and they'd still vote for him, right? They believed him wholeheartedly. And it was very, very clear from the responses to his tweets that they believed him wholeheartedly, that this was a situation in which their country was being stolen for them. And honestly, if you told me and I believed that you were overthrowing and stealing my country from me, in most cases, most Americans, most good, red-blooded Americans would have something to say about that. They feel, compelled to engage in action. And the first part of this is the evidence that Trump knew or should have known that he had lost that election, and he did it anyway. He basically perpetuated this lie. Anyway, this is testimony at the January 6th hearing of by Miss Hutchinson, Cassidy Hutchinson. She was an aide there at the Trump White House and witnessed a lot of the things that were going on. And this was a time period in which Bill Barr had just gone on national television and exclaimed that all of the cases that occurred across the entire country had turned up no evidence, and that there was no evidence that the election had been stolen. So if you could, Pablo, could you play this first clip here?
On December 1, 2020, Attorney General Barr said in an interview that the Department of Justice had not found evidence of widespread election fraud sufficient to change the outcome of the election. Ms. Hutchinson, how did the president react to hearing that news?
I first noticed there was ketchup dripping down the wall, and there's a shattered porcelain plate on the floor. The valet had articulated that the president was extremely angry at the Attorney General's AP interview and had thrown his lunch against the wall.
In this particular clip, what was made clear is that Bill Barr had explained to the gone on national television and basically explained that there's no evidence. And Ms. Hutchinson was talking about how she had come into the room shortly after that had aired, and Trump had thrown his meal against the wall. Several other interviews with White House staff under sworn testimony confirmed the fact that he understood and knew that he had lost the election. But he perpetuated this lie anyway, and went on to tweet about the January 6th rally. This is important, noting that this is the day in which Joe Biden would actually be sworn in. And in this tweet, he explained that at this rally that it was going to be wild. He knew and understood that there were multiple pro-Trump right-wing groups, such as the Oath Keepers, such as the Proud Boys, that saw this tweet, and the way in which they reacted to it was important. In that they mentioned that this is why we brought our firearms. He's calling for help. There's even a section in here where it explains that this is the most that he can say without saying it. That basically he's calling for them to come and defend him on January 6th. And that's what they understood that to mean. Now, I say that he knew that occurred, and it was. I say that because both the Department of Justice, the Secret Service, all had briefings with him from the time he tweeted that to January 6th, explaining that these right-wing groups, that this was the type of rhetoric that was occurring, and that the January 6th rally was actually dangerous. He specifically was aware that the crowd that he called to Washington was angry, and this was explained or testified to by Judd Deere. He was the press secretary. He basically said, should I focus on all the accomplishment? It didn't mention the 2020 election. What was his response? He acknowledged, we had a lot, something along those lines, but we fairly quickly move on to how fired up the crowd was or was going to be. Okay, and what did he have to say about it? Well, just that they were fired up, they were angry, he felt like the election had been stolen and that the election was rigged. He went on about that for a little bit. So in testimony by, I think it's Ms. Hutchinson, Donald Trump was briefed as to the risk of violence on that morning, and it was explained to him by his chief deputy, Mr. Arato, that these people were actually dangerous. He expressed to me that he was concerned that it could spiral out of control and potentially be dangerous either for our democracy or the way things were going to go on the 6th. Hope Hicks texted the Trump campaign spokesperson, Holly Gidley, in the midst of the January 6th violence, explaining that she suggested several times in the preceding days, January 4th and January 5th, that President Trump publicly state that this must remain peaceful and that he had refused her advice to do so. Her recollection was that the Trump advisor should make a preemptive statement in advance of January 6th or for a call of no violence, and no such call was made out to the public. So if you go to the next one, I think Trump knew that this crowd was armed. This starts off at, I think, around, in the morning of January 6th. Go ahead, if you would play. These were the types of individuals that So even after all this briefing, he sees individuals that are... He's got a bunch of people that are in paramilitary gear, helmets, marching in the streets, screaming, "These are our streets." And this is all prior to his actually getting up and speaking. This was all being monitored by the Secret Service, as well as the Capitol Police. And you notice we got people there with chest protectors, people that look like they're in a paramilitary group. There was a situation in which the Secret Service had set up magnetometers around where the speech was being given, and they were there designed to keep people that were armed away from the president. And the president didn't like how it looked when it was shot on TV, because the area for the ellipse was not filled up. The people that had weapons had to stay outside of that. And he asked for those magnetometers and repeatedly to be taken down. And he was quoted behind scenes as saying, "I don't effing care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me. Take the mags away, the magnetometers. Let the people in. They can march on the Capitol from here. Let the people in. Take the freaking mags away." So this is a person that knows we got paramilitary groups that are all ramped up and angry. He knows that they're armed, and he wants the Secret Service to take the magnetometers away, and he knows that they're not there to hurt him.
Just to be clear, Ms. Hutchinson, is it your understanding that the president wanted to take the mags away and said that the armed individuals were not there to hurt him?
That's a fair assessment.
I just want to confirm that that is when you heard the president say the people with weapons weren't there to hurt him, and that he wanted the Secret Service to remove the magnetometers.
That's correct.
This is some of the footage from the actual speech that he gave.
Mike is going to do the right thing. I hope so. I hope so. Because if Mike Pence does the right thing, we win the election. All Vice President Pence has to do is send it back to the states to recertify. And we become president, and you are the happiest people. Mike Pence is going to have to come through for us. And if he doesn't, that will be a sad day for our country.
In context, just prior to this, okay, he's got armed individuals, angry, think their country's being taken from them.
Where are they at right here, though?
This is the ellipse on the National Mall.
Okay.
Okay, and go to the next clip here. this is the context in which that speech was given. This came right before him, Rudy Giuliani.
Over the next 10 days, we get to see the machines that are crooked, the ballots that are fraudulent, and if we're wrong, we will be made fools of. But if we're right, a lot of them will go to jail. So, let's have trial by combat.
So, like I said, these things don't occur in a vacuum. You have to consider how the context in which everything happens. And whether the conduct is actually engaged or, you're engaging in something or not is determined by the context in which you're engaging in it. For instance, if I were to tell you that, we have a day in Georgia, it's humidity's high, it rained 2 days earlier, and I say, hey, I'm going to go out into the middle of this field and shoot fireworks, okay? And I'm going to be careful and use a lighter, and there's only a couple, things, Roman candles I'm going to shoot off, right? That might be appropriate, okay? But if you do the same thing in an Arizona desert where it's completely dry, there's sagebrush, dry leaves all around you, and everybody's houses are around you, and you're saying, hey, I'm going to go out in this field right here and shoot a bunch of Roman candles,
might be an issue.
Your conduct may be criminal. So if you go on, you talk about his speech, and in the speech, it's important to know that he mentions the word fight over 20 times. But the most important thing to me was that he basically explained that you have to show strength, you can't show weakness, that you have to fight, and that if you don't fight, you're not going to have a country anymore. If you'll play that again, play that next clip.
We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
So you got a bunch of people that feel like their country was stolen from them. They're all armed. They're all riled up. Rudy Giuliani is telling them they got to have a trial by combat. He tells them they got to march down to the Capitol to show strength and fight like hell, or they're not going to have a country anymore. This is the best example I can find of someone throwing a rock and hiding their hand. Okay, even the people in their tweets were saying that this is the best he can do. This is the best way he can tell us without telling us. But in this next clip, what I want you to do is note the timestamps that you see, and imagine you yourself were the president. Okay, watching this occur on TV, and your goal was to have this peaceful. Okay, to be a peaceful protest where they just pressured. You sit here and watch this,
and assuming that he is watching this on TV and not giving interviews to reporters, not giving speeches at the ellipse while some of this is taking place. You have to take that all into consideration.
Yeah, so the timestamps will be in here, and I'll explain to you where exactly he was during these times. But go ahead. This is 12:15 p.m. But I want you to tell me if you were the president, when you would send in help for the police, or for the Capitol Police, when you would send out a tweet to tell these people to calm down, to leave the mall, to leave the Capitol, to not be violent.
Mike Pence, I hope you're going to stand up for the good of our Constitution and for the good of our country. And if you're not, I'm going to be very disappointed in you. I will tell you right now.
You got 12:54, the first breach of the peace circle.
Get back, ladies! Get back, ladies! We just had protest, peace circle, breach the line. We need backup.
Madam Speaker, the Vice President, and the United States Senate.
So I'll just ask you, Shawn, if you're the president and you know this is going on, what do you do? And you want this to be peaceful.
you do your best to send in extra people to help, which there's a lot of people there, I would imagine. And you try and communicate with the people that are following you, to remain peaceful.
Okay.
And that's, assuming that you know exactly what is going on
That they're
right now
breaching the
as it
Capitol.
is going on
Yeah.
right this second. Not that, this is happening right after you walked off the stage of a speech somewhere else, and then 15, 20 minutes later, you receive notification that this is going on.
Right. The January 6th report shows that Donald Trump had already left the ellipse and was actually in the Oval Office dining room watching this on television by about 2 o'clock.
Okay.
So he's watching this happen right now. And
See a lot of people wielding assault rifles in there,
yeah.
overtaking the government with authority.
They've broken into that window and they're trying to kick it in.
Without objection, the chair declares the House in recess pursuant to Clause 12B of Rule 1.
Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones which they were asked to previously certify.
So he tweets that while he's watching this. Don't be violent. Don't be, leave the Capitol. So at this stage, are we? It's my position that this is a violent attempt to stop the peaceful transfer of power. The people are being violent. I know that a number of people were injured in this altercation, and the Capitol Police died as a result of it. I think that qualifies as a violent attempt to overthrow the government. And during this time, it's important to note that White House staffers, Mark Meadows, Pat Cipollone, who is his general counsel, are all pleading with him from the first breach on the Capitol to get on television and to tweet out that he wants this to stop, that he's instructing his supporters to stop this assault and to be peaceful.
Doesn't look like a lot of them are watching television at the moment.
Who?
These people that are doing the idiotic thing of storming the Capitol.
You're right, but at the same time, you did see a man up there with a microphone tweeting out, quoting Trump's tweets to the crowd. And I don't have the footage here, but I've seen footage when he tweets out. I believe it was around 2:40. I could be wrong. I'm not sure about exactly that time, but I think it's 2:40 that he tweets out to remain peaceful. So I don't think it's happened at this stage. This is still 2:28. Pat Cipollone and Mark Meadows are trying to get him to make a statement, come out and say something to tell these people on television or through tweets to stop what they're doing. At no point does he say that you need to leave the Capitol. He says that he does not want, he wants everyone in the U.S. Capitol remain peaceful, no violence. Remember, we're the party of law and order, respect the law and the great men and women in blue. Okay, we're still. I don't think have anything from Trump.
I don't think that. I don't see a whole lot of those people checking their Twitter accounts.
Right.
I see a whole lot of people, videotaping for the their own sake, their own bravado, their own probably social media later.
Well, this is a bunch of what they call oath keepers. If you'll go back just a little bit, these are a bunch of oath keepers doing what they call a stack. This is a way in which paramilitary groups and military actually enter a building. During that time, President Trump had done nothing. And I think the important thing to note is sort of what was going on. Okay, he's by 2 o'clock for sure. He is at the Oval Office watching this on a dining room. That has been testified to by multiple people, White House staffers, most importantly Casey Hutchinson, who stood in the doorway of the Oval Office dining room because she had a phone call from Jim Jordan, who was calling the president to ask him to interfere and to stop these people from what they were doing. He's scared for his life. He was calling for help personally. And this is what the staffer had to say about what she overheard in the discussions between the President Mike Meadows and Pat Cipollone. You can go ahead.
Rioters chanted, "Hang Mike Pence." The President of the United States, Donald Trump, said that, quote, "Mike deserves it."
As an American, I was disgusted. It was unpatriotic. It was un-American. We were watching the Capitol building get defaced over a lie.
So in that situation, when Trump was actually watching this stuff on television, and he had his chief of staff and his head of White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, explaining to him that he needed to get on in the television, to get on Twitter, and do what he could to actually stop this. His response was that he thinks Mike deserves it, and that he doesn't want to do anything. And so in that situation, I would say that the president had a duty, number one, when he knew the crowd was armed and there was the potential for violence, to actually call in extra help for the Capitol Police and not put them in a vulnerable position. I think that his plan was to do just this, to bring the crowd there, to rile them up, get them to come in and overthrow the election. And his tweets about the Capitol Police were there designed to try to get the Capitol Police to help cooperate with him and his protesters. And he understood that it was a bad look to have his crowd hurting the Capitol Police. Once the Capitol Police started to become attacked, the Capitol was breached, he had a duty as an American to, if he wasn't engaged in any sort of insurrection or wasn't going to allow that kind of thing to happen under his control and watch, which it still was, to call in whatever reinforcements that he had available to him. He had all kinds of reinforcements. What this basically shows is that he planned this, wanted it to happen, and the only time in which he actually intervened to stop what was going on here was when he knew that the horse he backed wasn't going to win. It was only after they started to gain control over the crowd and get them out of the Capitol that Donald Trump came on and basically gave a thank you to everyone that showed up, that they were beautiful people, and thank you for coming, but he wanted them to leave the Capitol when it became clear that it wasn't going to result in his actual ascension to the presidency and overthrowing of the government. The best way I can sort of analogize this is if you can imagine a firefighter with all of the means to stop your house from burning down, and he shows up, and it hasn't rained in Arizona in front of your and right at your house for 3 months. There's dry leaves everywhere, and he sits in your front yard with his fire truck hooked up to the fire hose, and he smokes cigarette after cigarette, shooting fireworks all around, right? And then when the police show up because your house burnt down, says, "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just smoking cigarettes. What's going on?" This is the proverbial throw the rock, hide your hand. And honestly, I think that if you think about it, imagine Donald Trump was your child. Okay, would you be proud of the way that he behaved that day, or would you say, at any one time, go back and watch that video and that time, say, okay, from 2 o'clock on, when would I have told my son, personally, if he was the president, when would I have told my son, my daughter, and said, hey, you need to do something? And how long would you have tolerated it for him not to do something before you started to judge him and say, hey, you're helping this. You're aiding this. You want this to happen. So like I said, I know for those people out there that are side with Trump, all this stuff is hard to hear, but try to go through that exercise of watching that video and imagine your child is Donald Trump or is the president. And under these circumstances, knowing that these people are upset, angry, armed, riles them up, and then they start to breach the Capitol. How long would it take you to call and get him to try and, or her to try and stop it?
A lot of food for thought
Yes.
to think through and contemplate.
That's right. And we are actually going to get food for thought on the other side next time. Shawnee's going to come back and present the stuff on the defense side. And we welcome you to comment on the evidence that I presented. If you have questions about it, if you want access to it, you let us know. But Shawnee's going to present next time. And then we want everybody to sort of comment and weigh in on whether or not you think Donald Trump, based on the evidence we presented, actually engaged in or aided or comforted insurrectionists. So until next time, thank you for
Enjoyed it.
Possible.